The title for this piece came from a New Testament verse in the Bible where there's a story of a man that was possessed by demons, and as the story goes, Jesus came into town and healed this man, but the community members were shocked and surprised, and they needed to come and see him for themselves to be sure that he was actually healed. And the way they described him was, yes, he's been healed, it's a miracle, he's clothed and in his right mind. And to me that stuck out because it kind of indicates the ongoing belief that we are sane when we are properly clothed, when we are properly uniformed, when we're properly garmented. Being a woman and being in the military, being in the Marine Corps specifically, to be out of uniform meant something other than sanity, meant something other than cleared of demons. Those indicators, those insignias, those symbols, those garments that supposedly identified me. It wasn't until I could strip myself of those that I finally felt freed of my own demons.
As a creative person who felt kind of stifled, very stifled in the military, I really get a lot out of being able to use that energy to sort of say the things that I was never able to say without getting in a lot of trouble when I was in the military. I still said them because I was like, well, you stopped last me and you sent me to Iraq, so what are you going to do? I'll just say that stuff. I think it's interesting that public affairs and journalism were like kind of looked at as synonyms in the military, which is a little bit scary. And so I spent a lot of time trying to do journalism instead of public affairs. And I got in trouble for that, of course. I kept a blog, an anonymous blog. Art has been such a source of improvement, of life improvement for me, a path to that, I guess. I haven't met many other Iraq and Afghanistan vets, or even any other vets that are somewhat creative-minded or artistic-minded who haven't just been really, really helpful for me to connect with and talk about my experience. And so,
as a Coast Guardman, again, retired Chief Petty Officer, I lived basically looking at the towers for a number of years on Governor's Island, which is an island in the middle of New York Harbor. So it's very emotional to me because I used to work right near there, and I was part of the World Trade Center, and I didn't know anybody that was killed in the towers because I wasn't stationed in New York at that time. I was in D.C., and I did have some friends that just missed getting killed in the Pentagon. But to me, this is a Requiem piece. I'm hoping this is the first of a series of Requiem pieces I have planned, and as my generation had to plow the way since I came in the Coast Guard the first year that the Coast Guard was mandated to take women. So I had a lot of those discriminations. I don't like women in my Coast Guard, which is the kind of crap that you would hear constantly, and where women had to be twice as good as men just to be considered half as good. And I could do my job as well as anybody else, but I would make a mistake and I was just completely screwed up. I refused to quit, and I was going to quit when I was ready to go. And I left at 30 years as a Chief Petty Officer, and I got a lot of bruises and to go with it, but it was worth it in the end, and I finished on my terms.
My artwork are the molds of my torso that are in the back room, but I started making them not really even having the idea that I was making art. I just have always drawn, I've always sketched, I was always really into art, and then, art isn't always practical for parents to tell you what to do, so, I joined the Army, and, join the Army, pay for college, become a lawyer, and I'm not a lawyer in case you can't tell. But when I started to make these molds of my body, it was more of a healing process for me than it was making art, and honestly, I never thought anybody would see them. It was something I had to get off my chest, figuratively and literally. If you look at them, I'm so happy to be here with other women vets. I think this is the most I've ever been in a room with at the same time. not just the ladies up here, but some ladies in the audience.
I had this sort of light bulb moment after getting mortared, waking up to getting mortared, where I was thinking, it was like the last time I ever wrote my journal because I got so mad. Because I was thinking, like, who's responsible for sending me here? What are they doing right now? It's like they're probably playing golf and like having dinner with their families, and they never thought about me before as a person. So, and then as like I've been waiting for 22 months for the VA to make a determination on my disability claim, and Dick Cheney's heart's powered by batteries. I get really, really frustrated. So that's where that one kind of came from.
My piece here is on Fatigue's clothesline. The reason why I created the idea was because I too was assaulted. I was raped by 2 Marines, and then I was threatened for my life. It took me about 10, 11 years to finally tell my husband. And it was really hard, but I had to get it off my chest. I wanted to bring this out to other women who may have experienced what I experienced. Not only because I didn't want to feel alone anymore, but I wasn't alone. The reason behind the clothesline being turned inside out is because when we wear that uniform, we're proud. But what you don't see is what's on the inside. When you see inside out, the blouses, when they turn it inside out, you see that the artwork is bleeding through. That's our disability showing. That's our emotions from holding it in for so long.
When I began curating the show, I began researching everything I could, reading everything about women's experience in the military. And I was just shocked to realize how prevalent military sexual trauma is. I had no idea. And I was a victim. And it took you a long time to come forward. I didn't report it. Actually, maybe a month ago was the first time I ever actually discussed it. When I was creating the work, I would tell my peers, it's about military sexual trauma. I wouldn't go into depth. I don't know why, but there is an embarrassment, a shame that I think victims often feel. And it doesn't make sense, really. I had no control over what happened to me, but it's still there. It's still embarrassing to talk about. I was newly enlisted, active duty Air Force, stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I had been maybe 2 months, and I was drugged. And I'm gay. So, and I've been gay since I was 15. I've been out of the closet. But I was serving under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And there was no way that I was going to report this and invite someone else to look into my personal life. And that was fear of getting kicked out of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And just in general, the embarrassment, the shame. Once I realized how prevalent it was and learned of the reprisal that the victims tend to suffer after reporting it, I wanted to learn more and investigate, imagine how my life could have been different if I had come forward. So for me, my piece is about that, and about investigating, understanding, and trying to reconcile my decision not to come forward.
Even artists as famous as Judy Chicago, women artists themselves, we may get into a show somewhere, but our art will be relegated to the basement. Judy Chicago's work got relegated to a basement, and that's where it was stored. But it was the men's art. It's always, we're fighting the male-dominated veteran world. We're also fighting the male-dominated art world.
I couldn't separate out having been a woman from having been in the military. And having been a machine gunner, I was always kind of harassed. I was second-guessed more than the average person would have been, even though I was a weapons instructor. But I just felt it was so important for me to make the molds of my body because everywhere I went, being a woman seemed so important to everybody else. When I went and told, I felt kind of re-victimized, but then for years I had it in my head that I wasn't sexually assaulted because nobody else treated it like I was. You know, that happened in 2004 and it's 2012 and I've just started to get counseling for that because even now it affects my own personal relationships and, you know, my feelings of personal safety. You know, you have this feeling in the military like somebody's either gonna call you a dyke or they're gonna call you a slut and there's nothing in between and there's nothing you can do about it. So you better just run faster and be really good at PT so they leave you alone. So I was kind of a chronic overachiever. I've made sergeant when I was 21, which in my unit was pretty much unheard of. And now that I'm an anti-war activist and I was the subject of a documentary Poster Girl, everybody's kind of quick to throw me under the bus and say, well, she wasn't that good of a soldier anyway. She was kind of a shitbag, you know?
I wish they could see me as the Marine, as the Army, you know, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, the Navy. You know, I wish we could just be seen as that instead of, oh, she's a woman, forget her.
When I'm talking or working or being the professional or being the counselor, the case manager, whatever it is I'm doing, interacting with people and feeling looked over. If they're not really listening to me, they're just kind of checking me out. And in those cases, is that okay as long as my message kind of gets across to them? Or is that unacceptable and I'd rather not be heard at all because they're not even making eye contact? And I had to think about it for a really long time, and I still don't know how I feel about that. I really appreciate the depth of that title and where it came from. It wasn't until I started taking some of the images where there was some skin showing that I felt like, well, shit, someone's gonna look at that, and they're gonna look me over. And how do I feel about that?
You're not looked at as a person trying to express himself, but a woman expressing herself. And that's like the lens that everybody sees all the things you're doing. It can be kind of frightening, be very angering and depressing, etc. All of the scary words. When I was in the military, that I would write editorials. You see the name on the editorial, but you don't see the face. It's you know, the printed word. And nobody's looking me over because they can't see me. Ha 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 ha. I feel like art is a really amazing way to get out of that cycle. Just step out of it and be like, look at my art. They're looking at the lens that I've chosen to use, which is a 35 millimeter. If someone's wondering.
It's funny because we're taught even to doubt ourselves. And at first I was the only female machine gunner on my team, and then we got another one, and it was like, I was so pissed off when people made me prove myself to them. And then I realized that I was trying to make her prove herself to me. Like, I had a young girl ask me at the shoe store, because I have a tattoo across my knuckles that says vet, and she's like, well, vet, like what? Like, veterinarian? I'm like, no, like combat veteran? And she's like, oh, do they give women guns too? And I was just like, I was telling someone about how I was a machine gunner in Iraq, and they said, they don't let women do that. And I was like, oh, really?
I think that absence is sort of a consistent pattern with women veterans and women artists. But it might be hard to notice if you're not one of those people. I mean, I chair the board of Iraq Veterans Against the War. This has happened several times in the recent past where I've been with some male board members and somebody will walk up and say, oh, this guy over here wants to interview a veteran. Can you or you come over and do it? And I'm basically sort of just not there, regardless of what position or title I might be. I really meant to be more involved in the process and wish that I could have been more supportive. But I mean, I think at that time it was like, well, you weren't there, so they talked to the people that were there. Like, it's logical. And the reason I wasn't there is because I'm a single parent, so I think that other gendered things sort of impact even your ability to be present. I think it was just important to me to bring a group of people who are often overlooked and or looked over, or a variety of things in between in reality, together, because it's hard to overlook when those are the only people that are in the show.